Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Aquarius Rising Africa to Saturday. And we have Caleb on with us today. But before we do, I would just like to give a great big shout out to our sponsor, who is Spooky 2, for this program. And as we well know, they are the creators of Home Rife Machines. And I know they've been very supportive of Caleb's journey as well. And I know poor Caleb has had some crazy detoxes with his Spooky 2 machine, but really a miraculous little invention, I want to call it. And I am the proud owner of the Hiwi, which is a really amazing little home rife machine. So before we go any further, I want to just play our advert and on the Spooky 2. So let's go there before we go any further.
Hello, I am Ahmed Marwin from Libya. I am 35 years old, and I am a veterinarian. I have been in Spooky 2 family since last February, and I am happy with that, as my family and I have changed our lives. And we have become in control of things. I am proud of this, and being from the medical community is from science fiction or superstition, and at first I had some doubts about the work of the device. So I said to myself that I have to try it myself, and I actually bought a basic MX set. The results surprised me, and they were amazing and unbelievable. I quickly bought Gen X and plan to buy the Central. There are many positive experiences with Spooky 2, but I had an exceptional experience in which I challenged myself and Spooky 2, and Spooky 2 won, and this is what happened. I had a cavity in one of my teeth in the upper jaw on the right, and it never hurt me. About a month and a half ago, it broke and started hurting my tongue, and it hurt. I went to a friend of mine who is a dentist in his clinic and decided to extract it, but he advised me to pull out the nerve and a white filling. I am convinced that pulling the nerve is a very bad thing. The tooth becomes a dead piece of dentin. The important thing is that I myself say this is the best test and challenge that I do with Spooky 2. After effort, my friend agreed to make a filling without pulling the nerve. And he told me that you bear the responsibility if the matter fails, and he said in the best case 50% its success rate, and it started working. Then he said it will not work because the 3 roots of the teeth are exposed. And this will cause inflammation and terrible pain, so I told him to continue and do not worry, and after finishing I asked him when the effect of the anesthetic will end. He said after about 3 hours gradually, and actually the pain started. I took an analgesic, then I started working with Spooky 2, and I did 4 scans for mouth and gum diseases, and for tooth decay, and for the Hulda-Clark program to relieve pain found in the cancer protocol. And the last one for oral and dental problems in general. Then I put it on the contact mode, then on the remote, and I kept waiting for the analgesic to finish, and the surprise was that there was no and it is funny that he called me the next day, because he was waiting for me to come back and ask for a root canal, and I was more surprised than him. This is contrary to what we read and told about in medicine. So thank you very much.
Well, there we have it. For dental cavities as well. Really does work wonders. So without further ado, let's bring Caleb on. Hello, Caleb. How are you?
I'm present.
Very happy to have you and very grateful that you're here. I know you've had a rough week. So welcome back to Aquarius Rising. And would you like to maybe just open for us in prayer, please?
Sure. Heavenly Father, I thank you for today. I thank you for the blessing of life, peace, and mercy. And just ask you continue to stand with all of us and give us all strength. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. And welcome to all our viewers. Really good to have you all here. Missed you on Thursday, guys and girls. But good to have you here. And we will be back again tomorrow. So we have a double dose with Kate this weekend. So, but interested to hear about what we're going to talk about, Caleb, in terms of South America. So I don't know, what do you have to tell us about South America? I know there's caves for starters, Antarctica, all sorts of things with the Nazis that were happening there. So I don't know. Do you want to start with the caves maybe?
Well, I had started to explain in a previous show about some of our activities down in South and Central America. We were following some shining path gorillas into the jungle to see where they'd go. We weren't necessarily there to kill them, but we were there to follow them and see where they're headed to. That's some of the very first times I started to see these entrances into the underground.
So when you're talking about the underground, are you obviously talking about the caves then, right?
What you would call the underworld, I guess.
Right.
They're more than just caves. These places are huge. Big enough to have their own weather.
Sorry?
Big enough to have their own weather systems of a sort.
Wow. Is there life there? I mean, I know we've spoken a lot about underground cities or stuff like that, but I'm not talking about these actual caves. As you say, big enough to have their own weather system. So what life form would be living in these caves?
Well, I mentioned previously it was just big. Everything was bigger down there.
Right.
Spiders, those earwig-looking things, giants, plants, everything was just bigger down there.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow.
I don't really have a good explanation for that. So, unless you consider that this was pre-flood and it just survived by sinking into the ground rather than being destroyed.
Because pre-flood, everything was really bigger, wasn't it? I mean, if we're looking at stuff, especially like if we're looking at in recent years, really in the last 2 years, according to what I've seen, and I'm sure it's been around before though, but there's been a lot of information coming out on like Tartaria, stuff like that, where they really, it's, just the buildings, stuff like that, that was, and, showing some amazing parts of the world where now we can see where cities are built on was actually like a tree trunk, that sort of stuff. So everything was bigger, right? would you be in agreement with that? Everything was much, much bigger than what it is now. And then once the floods happened, it kind of, let's say, caved in or got swallowed in, right?
Right. Yeah, if you look at some of the evidence of these big, huge trees that's out there, look at like Devil's Tower in Wyoming, look at some of the buttes and the mesas, they look like tree stumps.
Right.
And I contend that pre-flood, the Nephilim had harvested all those trees. They destroyed all those trees.
Wow. Wow. Any reason why? You can tell us they would have destroyed them? Is that just part of what they did, just to be destructive, or any specific reason?
Probably all of them. Destructive. Yeah. They needed them for something. You name it. I'm sure they were probably doing it for those reasons.
Right. Wow. Absolutely crazy. So
if you read an Enoch, talks about how they used up all the resources on the surface, food and everything else. They're eating everything in sight because they had a voracious appetite.
So there was no, interesting that actually, because there was no stewardship, was there?
No, it's kind of a free-for-all and everything.
Would that be perhaps one of the reasons why, let's say, the big floods arrived? I mean, if we're just looking at that on a more ecological level, because the ecosystem wasn't taken care of. So they literally destroyed the planet on which they lived or we lived, whatever, right? But the entire planet was destroyed because they didn't take care of the ecosystem. It's like a farmer. Anyone who who's lived on a farm or whatever. I mean, I know, for example, having grown up on a farm, there's certain lands that you feed, and then you've got to give them time. You've got to give them grace to, regenerate again. So you take your crops out of there or your stock out of there and you put them in other areas. So you've got to keep sort of rotating stuff like that in order for the ground to remain fertile and remain flourished. So to me, that would just seem that none of that was done. It was just completely destroyed because of mismanagement, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look at today. Look at I mentioned the red snapper, how old some of those are 400 and 500 years old that they're catching, and how they're not replenished. That would be poor stewardship, in my opinion.
Exactly. So it's like a continuation of that. The more I hear these stories and the more I see this, the more obvious it becomes to me just how, like, on the earth we're living in now, right, where it's like the reverse of that. Like, I mean, when you're looking at the insects and stuff, we are their giants, right? And in other dimensions, they are our giants type thing. But it's really just an inversion of what once was before. And that would say to me as well, it's about the mismanagement of all of that stuff. Wow.
Right. Yeah, there's lots of evidence pointing to the fact that this was just one big city after a time. One great big city with very few wild areas left.
Right.
And that's what the primary focus of the show is today, is the South American, the giant city they find in the Amazon. And they think it goes further than that. In fact, I know it does. But...
Right.
Very interesting to see all this stuff, and very almost frightening if you think about it, just to see how much of that stuff is covered up now. When you see it from the air without LiDAR or anything else like that, it just looks like a jungle. You never know if there's a big city there. Like a massive big city, not just something like New York or something, but way bigger than that even. And it's all connected underground.
And these guys are all aware. I mean, the controllers that are currently on our planet are all aware about this, right? They're all aware about these giant cities, but they're keeping it secret. Yeah.
As far as I was able to tell, or what I was told, yes. They knew some of the locations, not all of them. When we were following these guerrillas or rebels, not the animal guerrilla, but like guerrilla fighters, we were basically mapping out where they were going into the ground.
Wow. So these caves that you're talking about, what is actually, if the word is not caves for them, what would be the correct terminology to use for these things?
What did they call those caves?
Yeah.
I'm not really sure what they called them. I just know that we were mapping or surveying or looking at the ways to get into them. Most of them aren't known to most people, but to those jungle fighters, they know, because they've lived there probably their whole lives. So they know where they're going. But the Bible talks about the springs of the deep. I think these are some of those springs that were emptied of water, which now sits in the oceans that we see on the surface. If that makes any sense. That used to be reservoirs for deep spring water, I guess, if you want to call it.
Yeah.
Some of those entrances are like, I don't know, they're like you'd see it, or like a water hole, or like you said, like roots. That's the best way to put it.
I'm just looking at something from Lanessa here. Petrified trees turn into opals. Is that true? From what you understand?
In some cases, I'm sure that's true.
Yeah. Wow.
I just want you guys to know that this is only from my perspective. I'm sure there's a lot of information out there. I'm not really or necessarily a researcher, so I don't have a giant library full of information about these. I can only tell you what I know, what I've seen, just so you know that.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. And I think, I think what we understand here as well, you're not talking about something that you've read about or researched about. This is stuff you've experienced personally and what you've seen and what you've understood and where you've basically been. So you're talking from that perspective. And I appreciate that, because that's kind of like what really makes it real for us as well. So when you're talking about these caves, they really spread. So what you're saying is they've pretty much spread across, is it America or is it the globe, do you think? Are we actually living on one big giant city right now? All of us, or just
I wouldn't say one big giant city that's still active. I'm saying the remnants of one big giant city.
Right.
Imagine a big city with a few parks in it. That's what I'm beginning to see it as. And that's kind of how it's coming out on media too, is they announce these findings, but then they don't make a big deal of it. They just kind of put it out there so that they can say that they said something about it, I guess.
Yeah. And it's up to everyone. If you catch it, you're lucky. And if you don't, you're not so lucky. So you wouldn't really be right. So, okay. I know that in the past you've explained to us that in these caves, let's call them caves for want of a better word, right? There's like these oversized earwig insect things, those giants, etc., etc. Can you tell us? I guess I'm asking you to paint the picture for me, for us. Explain as you go into one of these things. What are you seeing? What are you smelling? What are you hearing? What are you perceiving with all your senses? Can you give us like a grade 1 tour through these things?
Well, there's a reason they had us going into there instead of a bunch of research scientists, because they're dangerous. I wouldn't ever recommend following a cave into the ground unless you know exactly what's down there or you're equipped to survive there. We were barely equipped to survive there. We're highly trained. We had some of the best equipment money can buy. So you first go into these places, some of them are like crawl spaces to begin with. But people had gone there. Like I said, these Shining Path guys are going into these underground tunnels. They knew about them. So that's why we were following them. We didn't stay close to them. We just followed their leavings, their trail. Figuring if we matched step for step with those guys, we weren't going to fall into a pitfall, trip some kind of trap, or run into sentinels along the way. And we saw plenty of that.
You mentioned the Shining Tunnel guys.
Shining Path guerrillas.
Can you just explain what that is, please?
Well, they're socialist jungle fighters that want communism to be spread over the whole entire world at some point. But they're probably a construct of the old CIA to fight against whatever cause they had down there at the time. Even to this day, they still have people going down there to try to, quote, win hearts and minds.
Right.
Or to start brush wars, or you name it. U.S. government's probably involved in it somehow.
I'm sure they are.
I'm trying to think of Ecuador, maybe, where they caught 4 or 5 Army Special Forces guys, SF guys, with a couple boatloads of automatic weapons and explosives and everything else that were trying to start something. They got caught, and the U.S. government just gave plausible deniability. Said, we don't know those people. BS, I say. They knew who they were. They were sent down there to start that problem. So they just became the stool pigeons or the patsies to be punished.
Right.
And when we went into these jungles, we knew that was a possibility at any moment that we could be thrown under the bus, the proverbial bus that you get thrown under. They told us as much. They said, we can plausibly deny that you exist and you're on your own. So all of our equipment wasn't U.S. made. It came from other countries, sourced out of the United States. We had no obvious IDs. We had really good backstories. Even today, if you look into some of my past, if you were to look me up, I'd be a black hole for about 15 years. As in, no activity, no history, no nothing. That happens a lot. People look me up that there's a black hole, or they'll come over a cover story for that. They'll come across the cover story that ends up in a dead end itself. So anyway, following these guys into this jungle place, these jungles, we started to find these entrances. And we notated them, put map coordinates to them. And after a period of years of doing this, off and on, it started to form a pattern down there where you could start to see where this outline of a big city was. That was before the advent of LiDAR, where they were able to map through jungle foliage and even dirt to see what's under the dirt. I think they call it terrain mapping. They started to see pyramids, buildings, streets, sewers. They started to find all different kinds of things underneath this jungle foliage. When we went into the jungle following these guys, they would disappear here and pop up someplace else, never in the same place. So either they're teleporting or they're going through some kind of cave network or tunnel system. And that's what it was. It was a tunnel system. So.
Wow. A tunnel system that was built then, part of this ancient underground structure, or something that the governments would have constructed in order to get through there in more modern day times? Or was it still part of the ancient system that they've just learned how to navigate their way through?
Combination of both.
How would they have constructed these tunnels in more modern, with, let's say, the US government? How would they have constructed the tunnels to suit their needs now? With what equipment?
Well, look at what the Mexican drug cartels can do on the southern border of the United States. They can build miles-long tunnels just with shovels and picks, with their own rail system, their own transport system, their own light sources, their own electricity, and their own ventilation. And you're talking tunnels that are 200 feet deep, 200 feet below the surface, with just picks and a shovel. So it's not much of a stretch of imagination that 150 guys who are using slave labor can make a big hole in the ground in relatively short order. As they use their captives as slaves, do their bidding, just work them to death, basically.
Would they have used guys like yourselves, for example, with powers, special powers? Because obviously you guys were, I want to call it, superimposed, amped up, right? Would they have used guys like that, or normal guys with picks and shovels?
Both, but they would use guys like myself and the team I was with, because we were able to see what was in front of us. The foresight is what I'm talking about.
Right.
It's all part of some of the magics that we'll learn. We'll start talking about here in the next few weeks, since it's the new year. You're talking, trying to think of a word that describes it the best. It's not divination. It's where I can cast a light a sort of or a type of light into this tunnel, and it will reveal hidden dangers. It's a visible light that will follow the length of the tunnel we're in for at least 100 meters or maybe more. And it reveals hidden danger. The problem with that is it takes a lot out of you to cast those kinds of spells. So we couldn't just constantly cast that spell and find our way. We only did it in important locations. That's where that spellcraft came in handy. Most of the time, we did it the simple way. We just followed who was in front of us. Slow going for sure, but extremely dangerous.
And I want to just reaffirm here that these gifts or spells, spell castings that you guys were doing, that was okayed, if you will. I don't know what the word is, by the military. In fact, they knew you had it. In fact, these gifts, they knew you were using it. In fact, they probably made sure that you used it. They probably made sure that guys like you were going down there who had these gifts so that you could use it, right?
Right. Yeah, there's an awful lot of superstitious people in those wild areas of the jungle. They don't see in reason like we do. They're kind of primitive in a way. So they're kind of told the old gods want you to do this or do that or be this or be that. That's the best way I can describe it. Wow. So many legends of powerful and magical creatures coming back to either save them or destroy them. And just look into some of the history that talks about that with these ancient people. When the Spaniards showed up even, they thought Spaniards were gods because they had shining armor. They had sticks that roared with thunder, which is their guns. And they rode on horses, which you hadn't seen yet up to that point. They didn't even know. They thought the horse and the man was one creature. They didn't realize they were separate entities. A good lot of that is because those underground Nephilim and Archons kind of they cultivated that way of thinking and that way of being in these jungle communities, so they could be seen as gods. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm wondering, these people, that the native people there that were still there, weren't these also the ancient Incas or Aztecs, that sort of thing? Are these not sort of still people from those original tribes? Or are you saying they're from Nephilim? They are the Nephilim?
I'd have to say they're mixed with the Nephilim that are still down there. But a lot of them did go into the underground, not just in South America, but in North America. You hear stories of that happening, legends, whatnot. The people we were looking for were called the Chachapoyas. They were all 7-8 feet tall and they all had blonde hair, blue eyes. Those were Chachapoyas. The Chachapoya people, they call them the people of the clouds.
Why were you looking for them?
They had some of the artifacts that we were sent to look for as well.
Did you find them?
We didn't find the Chachapoyas. We just found the remnants of them underground. That first city that I mentioned is probably one of the first places that we found a living ship. I think that the Chachapoyas are probably actually some of the people who helped build that place.
So can you tell us about the Chachapoyas? What are they? Tell us about them. People of the clouds. What are they like?
Powerful magic users. Some people say they came from Lemuria. Some people say they came from Atlantis. So there's two different arguments that go on there. And you go looking for these people. There's not an awful lot of information about them. Probably most of what you hear is misdirection anyway, because this is my contention. It's not something I saw directly, but when I was down there, I heard talk of the large German communities that are in South America. You have more Germans in South America than Germany, I think, actually. But that comes from World War II and before even. They're already shifting their focus from conquering the world to going into the ground. So,
question here from one of the viewers: are they Nordics? Are the Chachapoyas Nordics?
I would have to say they are what you would call Nordics. Although the Nordics themselves aren't what you think they are. So we'll get into that at some point here. Point being, talking about these different cultures that we were looking for, is they were going into the ground and becoming part of what's called New Germany. New Germany has been talked about quite a lot itself. We didn't realize how big that place is until we started to really look into it.
Wow.
That's where a lot of these Nazi officers and whatnot took their families to. They went into the underworld. Because they do have stuff, some of the higher technologies that can prolong life, can make you stay young, that kind of stuff, almost indefinitely. At some point, you use up your bodily resource and you start to die anyway. But if you can live for 200 years, that's an awful long time to be doing anything in our reckoning of things. I always compared it to how the dogs are in our world. Dogs live, supposedly they live 7 years for every one of our own. So imagine how long a day is for a dog. A day is going to be seeming longer for him than it does us, because we reckon time differently. That's kind of what happens when you go into these underground places. Time stops or changes or does weird things, in other words.
Yeah, you're kind of not on the call it the earthly timeline. You now move into their time zone or whatever it is. I don't even know if you'd call it the time zone, right?
Or lack of time zone.
Lack of time, yeah.
The atmosphere is different even. What you're breathing is different. You have to acclimate to it at first, especially the deeper you go. It's actually kind of lethal to you if you're not. We're all trained triox, deep dive divers, kind of like the Navy divers are trained for. You breathe triple gas to survive. There's a certain way you have to go about that, or you'll die the very first time. So you have to be very careful when going into there. So, and suspend all your beliefs, because what you're about to see down there doesn't match anything you know up here. That's why it seems so supernatural. It seems almost impossible, I guess, but until you see one for real right in front of your face, those giant earwig things. We'd heard of stories and we saw pictograms or whatever of them. We didn't believe they were that big until we actually saw one. And even now, wow, short of bioluminescence in those caves and tunnels, which there was a lot of, we couldn't explain that light that was hanging in the middle of the cave. It was, I don't know, a little bit darker than you'd expect a light to be, but it still filled that whole cave with light and warmth. It wasn't too hot, it wasn't too cold, nothing. It's a cave, it stays constant. If anything, it was super humid.
So did they still have day and night and stuff down there, or was it all just nighttime?
It's like all twilight, basically. I would say that it's like twilight, but a little bit brighter than that.
Wow. That's crazy. Absolutely crazy. So you talk about this New Germany underground, this underground system, town, city, whatever, New Germany. Can you expand on that for us, please?
Well, there's old legends of people who came up from below. That's where we heard about the Chachapoyas. And they're not natives like Indians, or they're not black. They're not races like you think of here. They look like Germans, blonde-haired, blue-eyed. And they're all, Nazi Germany was always looking for the perfect Norse or North race, the Aryans, whatever you want to call it. The modern day Aryans that come from the Caucasus have some of the features, but they've been so intermingled that they're not pure Aryans anymore, what they considered pure Aryans. They had an ideal. I mean, you can look it up if you want to, but so I'm not going to go deep into that. But they had an ideal of what a pure Aryan was. And the Chachapoyas fit that bill. So that's why they were looking for that. I mentioned we found, surely by happenstance, that first living ship. And I say happenstance because I think that it was calling to us. It was trying to communicate to us because it was, for lack of a better term, trapped there. So
wow. These you mentioned early on, there were pyramids, there were streets, there was sewage systems, stuff like that. Are these things all operational still down there with these beings that live there? So is it like fully functional, operating, all these things?
I'd say about 50% of what we came across is still fully functional. You could live there if you wanted to. Lots of food, lots of space, lots of warmth. Not like the surface where you have your seasons for everything. So it's like 100% its own way, I guess. I'm having a hard time explaining it because to paint the picture for you like you asked, it's difficult just to do that even. So
yeah, no, I appreciate that. Wow. It brings to my mind, as when I see someone in the comments said the same thing, you know, Hitler with these blonde-haired, blue-eyed race and always in search of the perfect race. And as you say, this whole New Germany underground cities there, the tunnels, the Nazis that actually went there after, I guess, the Second World War, right? I mean, we quite au fait with Operation Paperclip. We understand about that, but this is on a whole different level. So how does that link in with Hitler trying to produce the perfect blonde-haired, blue-eyed race, and obviously trying to exterminate everything else that came along with that? What is your take on that?
well, somehow they were in contact with these new Germans, as they call them. They're German. They speak German. They look German. They were in contact with them and basically invited to come down. I'm saying that simply, but they're basically looking for entrances into the underworld because they'd heard about that through the Rill.
Wow. So do you think Hitler was actually fulfilling their wishes, this underground Germanic race, if you will? Do you think their wishes were kind of being vicariously lived through Hitler?
I'm not sure if they were vicariously doing it, but I do know that there came a turning point. There wasn't just America entering the war or anything else. There came a turning point where Hitler started to export all of his best and brightest people to South and Central America. And by virtue of those two countries to the Antarctic. I'm sure you've heard of the Crystal City down there.
Yeah, I actually want to get there. That's definitely something that I want to ask about as well, because now that you mention it, because I mean, the Antarctic has been probably one of the most mysterious places that, you know, so many questions have been asked around it, right? And I was actually just doing a little bit of research on that. And in 1992, a Gleason map was created that shows the Antarctic encircling all of our continents. Do you think that has anything to do with what we're talking about here? Is that all linked?
You know, I'm not really sure if it's linked or not, but they consider that the ends of the earth. right there.
Yeah.
Which a lot of flat Earth people claim their argument to there being a flat Earth, but I think that it was more of a toroidal shape, to be honest with you. But
yeah, makes sense. Toroidal definitely makes sense with like the firmament, right?
right.
What they're saying, I was actually just listening to something that Admiral Byrd, who obviously apparently explored this. But again, how much of that is true, who knows? But I'm just going on what I've actually gone sort of listened to there. What he's saying, it's not just in a massive ice continent, but rather an enormous ice wall that surrounds all of the continents. And then if you manage to cross the wall, we will find numerous other continents that have been deliberately hidden from us by the governments. What do you say about that?
It's kind of like painting monsters on the map, where it says, here there be
Right.
tigers, here there be dragons. Because they didn't want people to go there. They didn't want
Right.
people to see the truth of it. So they obscured it. Obfuscation is one of their primary tactics when they're dealing with normal people. By normal people, I mean the people that don't know this.
Right.
And they'll sell it to you hook, line, and sinker through the media. So
yeah, exactly. What he was saying as well, I mean, the minerals and resources that are there. I mean, he was talking about coal. There'd be enough coal for the entire humanity to supply the whole world for quite some time, and things like oil, things like uranium. He's saying it used to be tropical, but now it's frozen over. And of course, then underneath this frozen over area would be these underground crystal cities. So what can you tell us more about that?
the city, I really don't even call it a city. It was one of those living ships that we saw. You could tell it wasn't from here. I'm not saying it came from an alien planet or anything else. I think it's angelic technology. Always remember that angels factor into this quite a bit, the fallen angels. And I think it was at their guidance that some of these places were built or created using the ancient AIs. As I mentioned, well, as you kind of mentioned too, was a lot of these places were still very functional. It's like somebody just left 10 minutes ago, but there was nothing down there. So we were able to see. I wasn't there to research their technology. I was just there to make sure that the place was safe enough for the people who were coming behind us could research that technology or take it or whatever they're going to do. After I was there, I didn't have anything to do with that, but we did know that there was a way to get around down there. I mentioned it in a previous show, the one with Jesse, where I talked about that lift. I call it a lift because that's what it kind of looked like to me, but cubicle in shape, kind of brass or golden colored. It made a really strange noise when it activated. There's a sense of tremendous speed, but mostly you didn't notice that you were moving at all till you open the door and you're in a different place altogether. So I could not honestly tell you how that worked. But I know that it worked very effectively because we went thousands of miles in just a few moments.
Wow.
That's how we started to understand that these shining path people were getting around. They'd show up at the weirdest places, the same people. So, and they weren't necessarily magic users, but they were able to plug into this old technology.
Wow. I see quite a few people in the comments mentioning Urantia. Is that how you pronounce it? Urantia. Is that the town or the city that's beneath Antarctica?
I think it's a book.
Okay. Is that the name of the book, Urantia?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right. Okay. I thought that might be the one of the towns or the cities there. Wow, that's incredible, actually. Um, sure. So, I mean, I'm just thinking, with all this information that's coming out now, is this, I mean, what military importance is Antarctica to us at this point? Is there anything you can tell us about that?
Is there any military importance? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Well, aside from the fact that they know it goes into the inner Earth, North and South poles both do, to form this toroid that we're on, that's the significance of it. There's remnants of the pre-flood world that are still operating and alive, just like there are underground. All these underground caves and tunnels, they form a gigantic network. I didn't see most of it. In fact, I saw a lot of it, but not most of it. So the military intelligence would be, I think they share knowledge there. Nobody's supposed to claim it or plant a flag on it, even though Russia did already. I think China did too. But basically, I don't know. I'm not really sure the military significance other than they're uncovering technology down there.
Well, I guess it will all be about who's the best. I mean, as you say, if Russia and China have already placed their kind of flags there, so to speak, right? It's all about who's the most powerful again. So I guess that would be the military importance. So because who gets the most power, who gets these artifacts, right? And who can get to use them. Would that not be what it's about at the end of the day, power?
Yeah, at the end of the day, for sure. I wasn't sure why they were trying to plug in so much with the Chachapoyas, but we were looking for them too, to see where they were. I think eventually they did find them, but they had a lot of surface tension going on at the time, which is still the case today. And the global war on terror kind of put a damper on exploration and travel and whatnot. I'm sure it still goes on today. We became occupied with other things, other reports of strange beings coming to the surface, and that kind of really the only whole point of me talking about this, besides the fact that it's interesting, is the sightings that people have been having in Florida and other places. Why Florida? Why Nevada? Why these places that they show up? Why Skinwalker Ranch? Why all these things? I think A, the veil is thin enough that they can just walk through now. And B, it's probably just time for them to make their appearance.
Right. Exactly.
I don't know if anybody has seen some of the footage coming out of Miami, but it looks like a giant earwig to me walking on the ground, or a praying mantis.
I saw that thing. Yeah. I was actually wanting to ask you, in terms of these portals and vortexes, if you will, that are starting to open now with all of this stuff that we're hearing about. It would seem that they're finding, as we say, the veils are thinning, and these things are finding their way through. I'm still trying to understand, though, from their perspective, what do they want here on our realm? Do they want to take over? Why now that the veils have thinned are they coming through? Are they trying to create fear? Because again, if we go back to what we were talking about, I think I mentioned in the last show, these alien-looking creatures coming also in Peru. I think it was July, August. They had these huge things with big masks looking like I don't know, these guys from these sci-fi movies coming out fighting with people. One of the 15-year-old girl's neck was cut, although she's not dead. But they're coming in combating with humans, right? There's more and more of these sightings, of these stories coming through now. So what is their end goal? What do they want? Is it all part of them trying to take over this realm? Or what other possible reason would they have for coming through here now?
Well, it's because they want back what was once theirs. They want this back. This used to belong to them. It used to be their domain, as it were. That'd be a guess on my part, but I don't think it's far from the mark. There's no love shared for us or with us either. They hate us, and they look at us like we're cattle, mice. So they're to be used.
Well, how come we got to be here then? I mean, as human beings, we've always understood Earth as a planet for humans, right? But if they were here before, how come did they abandon Earth? How come we got to be on Earth then?
You know, that's going to be one of the questions of the ages as to the whys of everything about us. I can't claim to have the righteous answer, the best answer even. I just can tell you what I experienced and what I saw. And from what I experienced and what I saw, there's a huge universal conflict going on between good and evil, which sounds so cliche. It sounds so comic bookish, but it's true. There's good and there's evil. It's not something that we could fight on our own. We had to use the help that God offered to us to be able to overcome it. And we still do to this day. We have to. So
just seems, when we're looking at this, we're really not equipped to deal with these guys and their hi-fi technologies and the things that they are seemingly able to do. It just seems like we feel a little bit defenseless, other than to have absolute faith and know that your faith is your weapon. It's everything, right?
Right. Childlike faith. I mean, your kids trust you implicitly, and they know that if they turn to you for resolution of a problem or something else they're having, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be able to fix it for them or solve it for them or provide some kind of healing from what happened. So think about that.
Yeah, exactly. It's true. Yeah, bias. Sorry if that's the correct. Just there's a mosquito flying around me. It's really irritating. My suggestion is to stop putting your energy into material world falling apart and focus on building your connection to Christ. That's exactly what it is. It's that what you were saying now, Caleb, that childlike faith, right? We have, and I mean that's again, going back to what we've said in many of our previous shows. Part of the whole way that they've gotten to us human beings is by dumbing us down, by really the food we eat, the medicines we take, the way we give our power away to doctors, to surgeons, to anyone who has money. The whole money material world has taken over our senses. So we've kind of like really gotten to the place where as long as I've got 5 houses, 3 cars, 10 boats, whatever, I'm cool. But really that's the lie, right? It's the lie. And I think it's about understanding we got to flip that, right? That materialism. And as you say, go back to that childlike faith, right?
Right. Yeah, that's kind of the point. I mean, they're going to try to sway your opinion one way or another. If they can't sway your opinion, they'll try to destroy you or they'll try to kill you. If they can't do that, then they'll just hurt your family. They'll try to get at you any way that they can. You've seen this yourself personally, as have I. And it's not, how could you say it's not real, I guess? Because some people think that, well, this isn't real. This is just, you're having everyday struggles and you're attributing it to these supernatural creatures. It's like, well, why shouldn't I attribute to that? That's who is doing it, Right. That's who's coming up out of the ground. And it's gotten so prevalent now that it is out in the open and people don't even notice. It seems like it's astounding to me. They just don't seem to care. Just like you mentioned, all the material stuff that's out there, they're so into the material, they can't see that there's something evil standing 10 feet away from them. when they do see it, they hit the panic button. That's the best thing I can describe as happening in Florida. They hit the panic button, and I noticed that the police weren't there trying to catch this thing. They were just keeping the people away from it, trying to keep it contained where it was. And I've seen 50 videos on that whole thing. Everybody says it's fake, it's this, it's that. Well, you just keep on telling yourself that until you see another one somewhere else, because they will show up. They are showing up.
Isn't that part of the deception now? Again, it's like, oh, well, half is saying it's real, half is saying it's fake. Again, this divide and conquer type thing. You're imagining things. It's not true. It's a psyop. And then, but also what I find interesting at the same time, these things are coming out at the same time as the Epstein flight log is being released. There always seems to be two things happening at the same time, where there's that and one is distracting from the other. So I think, that's why I say us poor humans on this planet right now, we're having a rough time. And we really, and I keep saying this, we really just have to pray, align with God, have absolute, as you say, childlike faith, and you will know what to do in those moments. If you are confronted with these things, God will show you. You will be told. It's like you will automatically know what to do. But we're only going to get to that place, right, when we release our fears around these things, and when we put down the BS, man. Throw that TV away. Throw the TV away. Sure, have your phone to look at stuff and what have you, but get into nature. Connect, make your own, grow your own foods, connect with people, connect with animals, get that incredible human connection going again, because that's the thing. The consciousness, the human consciousness, the human spirit is what needs to be growing and expanding right now. And I can't help it. I have to, because it's like every now and again, I will just sit for an hour and look for the biggest crap on YouTube or whatever. I'm not on TikTok. I don't even want to think about what is on TikTok. But for me, my own information, I like to see what BS is out there. And I want to tell you the types of things people entertain themselves with nowadays. It's actually quite scary. And I don't say we have to all be like heavy and doom and gloom all the time. There's got to be that balance. But I just see so many people have just disconnected from spirit, from Christ, from each other. And that for me is the thing that we have to be most concerned about, or that we really most have to reconnect with. I don't know. What's your take on that?
Well, it's all about getting back to what's real, what the truth is. And media is not going to tell you the truth for sure. They're going to try to shut people like myself up. They're going to try to obfuscate. That's what they do. They try to obscure the truth just enough so you don't see all of it. They don't want you having faith. They want you to be one of their drones, one of their breeders, one of their avatars, whatever they want you to be. That's what they want. And in order to hear any of this stuff, you have to want to hear the truth first. And if you want to hear the truth, you will hear it. It should be plainly obvious to you, just like the end of your nose is in front of your eyes. And we're kind of given a choice at that point to believe that or to believe what the world has to say about any of it. So I'm telling you, as one who has seen these things, and I have pretty much my entire life, you'll notice that that's what they are when they start to show up. Like I said previous, they didn't just start showing up yesterday. They've been showing up for years and years and years and years. They just keep it hidden. They keep it obscured. They keep it under wraps, or they just call you crazy. Yeah, you're crazy. Absolutely. You should be on this medication because you're insane. So, my opinion, it'd do good to hear or listen to people like myself who are telling you what's about to happen next. We're telling you in the easiest way that you can digest or take on or even understand. Because if you haven't believed any of this yet and you see one of these things appear 100 feet from you, what are you going to do? You probably die of a heart attack. These things are terrifying. They're more real than you can imagine. When you see it for the first time, you'll be shocked. You will be shocked, I guarantee it. I've seen more than a few of them myself, and I was still shocked every time I saw how big they were, how powerful, the magic they could use, the very sense of dread you get from them. It's absolutely dreadful, terrifying dread. And you can't just run away. You have to face it somehow. So I survived before because I was heavily armed, and I also was a magic user, a powerful magic user myself. That's how I was able to stay on the safe side of life with them. But 19 of my teammates lost their lives fighting these things, so, amongst other things that happened. We were always on their trail, so always looking to see where they're coming up at. I don't think it was for containment. I think it's because they're mapping out where they're coming up at. The shadow governments want to know that. You hear a lot about the company or the shop or the farm or there's a whole bunch of weird names they have for the shadow government. But it all points back to one company from the 1800s, 1800s that started this whole stampede into what they called the New World back then, even though it wasn't new at all. And it was based on trade. I think you know what I'm talking about, Chantel.
Yeah, absolutely.
They were a trading company that came from the Netherlands. That's where they began their real turn into the world. At least the 1600s or 1700s.
Can I say that? Can I say who they are?
If you want, yes.
The DEIC, Dutch East India Company, and that was the first 1652. Is according to our history books in this country. I think it was the 2nd of April to be exact, but you never know. That's what we were taught at school. 1652 is when Jan van Riebeeck arrived in the Cape, and he was with the DEIC, the Dutch East India Company. And that is when the infiltration of, call it the colonization, occurred in Africa, from what we've been told. And I know there's a lot of other stuff that's been said in the history books, and we've been lied to a lot. But that's really, call it in the modern day, that's when the Dutch East India Company, Jan van Riebeeck, arrived in the Cape in 1652. So that definitely is, and as you say, that was the original shadow government. So I think it's a very good. I love that you brought that to my attention as well, because I think it's important for us to understand knowledge is power, and not that we're going to necessarily go out and do something with it. Some of us might have the ability or the know-how or resources or whatever to be able to do something, but just for the understanding, for me, understanding is such a powerful tool to understand things and to be able to then make head or tail of what we're dealing with. That for me is really, really, really important. And I like that you've mentioned that, because of course they weren't just in Africa or South Africa, wherever. I mean, they were all over the world, these guys, spreading their nonsense. And what do you say about that?
They've had people chasing their tails since at least then, probably before then. They were just known by a different name. You're thinking even earlier than that, there was people coming out of the Roman Empire who started this whole bunch of nonsense. Roman Empire used to go all the way as far north as Germany and everywhere else. So stands to reason that why would they stop? Went through a period called the Dark Ages. Does anybody really know how long the Dark Ages lasted, besides the church and everybody else that were involved with that? That was where they were tearing apart Tartaria, dividing it up, conquering it, trying to eliminate the Tartarians because they were a power to be reckoned with. You never hear about them anymore. You never hear about Tartaria unless it's really off the wall subjects like what we talk about sometimes here. But they were dealing with them, and they were also busy destroying libraries, books, information, killing people who knew too much, and making deals with these underground entities, these whatever they're making deals with, these angels, these Rephaim, these things. If you don't know any of this stuff, how would you know it?
Yeah, exactly.
And it took me a long time to get to the point where I can actually tell you. I didn't say that name out loud because I'm still fighting an inner tripwire that says, don't talk about this. It's dangerous information. And what kind of tripwire did I trip just by saying it? Why? What's going to happen to me now? I'm okay with whatever's going to happen next. But at the same time, it was deeply ingrained in me to not talk about any of this with anybody. Even amongst the ranks, we didn't speak much about it.
Someone is asking you here if you know anything about red mercury.
That was something that you see it portrayed in one of these new Star Trek movies. They call it red matter. It's basically antimatter. It's contained inside Mercury itself. They found a way to contain it so that it doesn't just explode in the air. I think they contain it with oxidation, actually. So cinnabar, I think that's what they call it nowadays too. But it's a tremendously powerful source of energy, antimatter. If you take a pinhead sized drop of it, mix it with anything out here unprotected, it would make a huge explosion. It would be an uncontrolled reaction. So they're taking microscopic accounts or amounts and using that to power some of their technology these days. They have to have two different sources of power. A, something like red matter, and B, souls. Souls are kind of their fuel rods, like the control rods to the red matter. It's you know anything about thermonuclear reactors, they control it with graphite rods so it doesn't become an out of control reaction and just destroy everything for hundreds of miles. That's what they kind of use us as in the gem form. If they contain us in soul gems, they can use us as control rods.
Wow.
There's an awful lot to all this stuff. Like I said, we could go on for weeks talking about this. A couple things that happened, I'd probably die of starvation and thirst, or my voice would give completely out, or I'd fall asleep on you. So I don't think I could make it weeks and weeks, but we could try it, you know.
No, we will. We'll get there. We will get there. We'll week by week we will get there. I'm just actually looking at some of the comments and things. Yeah,
it's actually really hard for me to talk about a lot of this stuff just because they kind of destroyed my ability to trust anybody when they threw me under the bus when I was 15 years old, or well, younger than that even. And B, it's kind of indoctrinated into me, so to not say anything.
Right. But what I love is that's kind of, and I keep saying to the viewers as well. I mean, just from a year ago to where you are now. I mean, you and I will often joke about you can't believe you're actually speaking and disclosing the information that you are. And I think it's absolutely amazing that you are, and we will get there. I know there's a lot of information that we are going to get to, and we are getting there. So, week by week, we will get there. We're going to be going into the magics, the different 12 different magics that Caleb has. become masterful in, was masterful in.
You start to see these things everywhere around you at a certain point. Once you get to a certain point of wisdom or knowledge, I mean, think about it this way. I don't know if you know what a Volkswagen Beetle is. They call them bugs or whatever.
Yeah.
You won't see a single Volkswagen Beetle for months and months and months. And somebody will mention it to you. All of a sudden, you see Volkswagen Beetles everywhere. Every time you go to a stoplight, there's 4 or 5 of them going through. It'll be like that once you start to see this stuff finally.
Yeah.
One of the primary tests for the magic or the arcane is seeing runes. Runes are everywhere. They put them in specific places for specific reasons. And most people don't see them ever. They never notice. If I was to teach you the Elder Futhark, the Elder language, you would start to see them everywhere around you. You'd be shocked. You'd be shocked at how much is right in front of your face, and you don't see it.
Exactly.
Very hard to explain some of this stuff because most people don't see that. I mean, there are sensitive people, there are empaths, there are gifted people out there who can and do see these things. But most of them are considered crazy. They're considered off the wall. Everything else, they do their best to make you seem like you're not worth what's happening around you.
Indeed.
It's hard to explain a lot of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely. I think there's so many people out there that have, as you say, been called crazy. But what's really amazing now is in the last couple of years, these types of conversations and these topics are becoming more normal. People like yourself are being believed. Survivors and overcomers are being believed. So, and I think that's what's amazing, and that's what's changing. So, and it's so true what you're saying. But you say, when you start seeing the runes around you, it's like part of us being dumbed down is that we've never been, I want to say, taught. It's we've really been taught in such a boxed fashion. With the education system being what it has been, and how the entire human race has been controlled, basically. And as you say, there have been those the empaths and the seers, that sort of thing, that have seen these things, that have understood these things, and in a minority have been made to feel like, well, you're crazy, you don't belong here, that sort of thing. But I look forward to us, it's like lifting the veils from our eyes just start lifting, like blinds being rolled up, and we start seeing things differently, and we start seeing the truth of what's going on there. And that's why I really appreciate you, because you are giving us a lot of information, and very important information that we need as well. So thank you for that. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's fascinating to look into this stuff. It's also very dangerous. So I always tell people to be very careful. Make sure you pray. Make sure that your spiritual welfare and health is in order. And you're going to see a lot more of this. You'll see a lot more of it. Some of it you'll start to remember that I've told you about, but you'll see it. I mean, it's going to become plainly obvious to everyone here before too long. And that's when you'll see people choosing right or wrong at that point, because they don't understand what they're seeing. So they're going to try to take the easy way out. They're going to want the steak back in their mouth, like that guy in the Matrix. I just want to eat my steak and enjoy it. They're not going to be happy with the spiritual food that they're getting. They're going to listen to the material side of themselves, not realizing that the material side of yourself is not the real you. Not what you can touch and taste with and feel and see out of. It's just the meat suit that's covering your spirit.
Yeah.
Your spirit is where your soul combined together with the body. And that's what makes up you. That's what you are. Mostly pure energy. I'd say mostly.
Absolutely. Absolutely, indeed.
I can
And I
keep
think
going if
that's
you're
right.
still up to it.
Sorry, carry on.
I can keep going if you're still up for it. Are you
We
getting
can keep
tired?
going. Yeah, we can keep going. But I think as well, what's important, and that's what we intend to do more and more of this year as well, is to actually, do more live connections as well, like we did on Easter. Not Easter, sorry. Where did I come on Easter? Christmas and New Year, stuff like that. Where, as a group, we will be doing more connections. Caleb will also start doing, and that has to be on Patreon, guys. And I'll start announcing that in the next couple of weeks. The music decodes as well. Super interesting that, because I know you've got a lot of information around that as well. But yeah,
They tell you everything right in front of your face. Most people never see it.
Yeah.
In fact, they incant with them when they repeat the lyrics over and over. That's incantation.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's one of those magics that we'll talk about.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, I saw actually what's your take on Michael Jackson, actually? Because I've been actually watching a few things of his lately, where he's actually mentioning that in an interview he was saying, like the choir, especially like the chorus, not the choir, sorry, the chorus of songs, that would be the incantations, right? So the more you repeat that, the more you basically call that up, whatever it might be, right?
Right. Yeah, it's disconcerting to see how many people just don't know this stuff and how they're duped and they're kind of dragged off one way or another. But that's why I'm here. I'm trying to say as much as I can about what's out there as relates to. I mean, the whole point and purpose of me talking about the South American situation is because they're coming into the southern United States. They're coming from the south. Some of those old tunnels and entrances are, you can call it a portal if you want, but they're just doors. They're big enough to let some of the big ones come through. And I think that's what they've done. They found there's 9 gates with 9 keys. They've opened a lot of those big gates. I mean, there's more gates than that, but those are the important ones. And there again is the number 9. You have to wonder why they keep using that stuff. Using number 9 to do things. I don't like to get into numerology, but there are reasons for all these things being done. Very ritual. That's the kind of their downfall, I think, in my opinion. They depend on ritual for a lot of things.
Absolutely.
And I think the ritual is to get people to agree with you. As human beings that can make a choice, unless you outright say, I don't agree, you're agreeing with them by being silent. And you're raising your family in agreement with their way and their will. So the God's way and God's will. There's a tremendous difference between the two.
Absolutely. Wow. Just trying to see some of the comments here as well. Holidays being the 7 sins. What does that mean? Holidays being the 7 sins. What is your take on that?
That sounds like a Catholic ideal. I've never heard of it being the 7 mortal sins or 7 deadly sins. Any sin's dangerous if you're looking at a holy God. All sin is imperfection. If he can't abide imperfection, we're all in trouble because none of us are perfect. But that's why he made a way for us to come home. And that's what I believe is that way to come home.
I think what I'd like to at some point address in some of our future interviews as well is definitely the elementals. Things like, and I know we've spoken about fairies, unicorns. I know there's a lot of talk about unicorns and things going on, and I'm deliberately ignoring that because I know that's kind of a story for another day. But it'd be very interesting to actually address that, the fairies, the nature spirits. We have spoken about tree sprites and things like that, I know.
Right.
But it's very interesting, to look at things also, beyond the physical, beyond the physical, and what that really means and where that actually comes from, right?
Yeah. I've heard Jesse mention the ancient witches when they fight or whatever that they do. I've heard that mentioned. We never called them ancient witches. We called them hags. Or Hagravin, I guess is one of the Norse ways of saying it. And they encapsulate or conquer or command or enslave elementals to do most of their bidding. So elementals are really important. One of the things that you find in the underground or the underworld is a lot of elementals. And they're kind of freelance. They're dangerous just because they're there. That's what I call sentinels. They're kind of put in those tunnels to keep people out of them. Unless you go too far in, then you're never going to come out of there. They'll either kill you or they'll capture you and take you wherever they take you. That's a really obscure, not very known or very esoteric information about the elementals. But the Bible does mention them. So it's not like they're not known. I kind of likened it to something that it hasn't chosen a side. It's neither for or against anything. It's just kind of neutral. And they're kind of stewards over what they're stewards over, be it plants or rocks or water or whatever. And that's why people see so many of those things out there. They think, oh my God, it's a demon. Oh my God, it's this, it's that. When really, it's just an elemental doing what elementals do, which is to make sure the world still functions. Find them everywhere. So,
as you said, they're neutral. They could go either way.
They have to make a choice, just like we do. At some point, they have to.
So basically, let's say when you're talking about the hags, the ancient witches, for example, that's easy for them to conjure up these, call them the elementals, to do their bidding. And of course, these things are very deceptive, right? Anything like that is very deceptive. So the more it might come to you in a beautiful shape or form with a lovely voice and a nice aura around it, but it's not necessarily, all is not what it seems, right?
No. In fact, I'll compare it to another movie. It's like one of my favorite things to do because they say so much in these movies. Raiders of the Lost Ark, at the very end, when they open the ark and they see these spirits come out of the ark, and the guy pretending to be the high priest says, "It's beautiful." As soon as he saw its beauty, that's when he saw its death too. He saw that it was his death, and it consumed him with fire. So think of them as that way. They're not something that you want to go out and shake hands with or ask to sit down and play dominoes with. They're dangerous all by themselves.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, and I agree with you there, because I think that is, it's important for us to recognize that there are many other, call it life forms, right, that exist in different realms on planet Earth, where we are right now. So for us to see these things, it doesn't, you don't have to be good. It's not necessarily a positive thing to be able to be psychic or to have gifts or things like that. It's often, again, it's a neutral thing. It's what you're using it for, right? But at the end of the day, when you are in alignment with God, with the Holy Spirit, you don't need anything else. You really and truly don't. You have your gift, and that is the connection to God. And in the moment that I'm going to go back to what I was saying earlier on, because in the moment, and I agree, we're going to be faced more, I do believe we're going to be faced more and more with these interdimensional beings, so to speak, in the years to come. So I do think that the more we align with God, with the Holy Spirit, We will know what to do. We will be in the right place at the right time. We will have the right armor or ammunition at the right place or the right time. I, for one, I mean, and I'm probably one of the few people in this country that has no firearm, and I refuse to have one. And because for the simple reason that I believe that, I mean, especially when I look at my country and my countrymen around me, and there's so much violence and death, I don't choose to be part of that. I really, really don't. I have an absolute unwavering faith that I don't need that. I really don't need that. And I know that I'll be in the right place at the right time, and whatever armor I need is coming from my spirit. And that is more powerful than any bullet or any whatever it might be that anyone else thinks they need. I'm not criticizing anyone else who does that. I'm just saying, for me, that's what works. I have a very strong faith that I will be in the right place at the right time. God, in many occasions, has shown me that I'm protected as well. I've had certainly attempts on me in different ways. And more, I'm just shown that I am completely aligned and I don't need anything else. So I think for me, you know, as well, when it comes to these different interdimensional spirits that a lot of people rely on, I wouldn't rely on that either. I would simply rely on my relationship with God. Yeah. What do you say about that?
100%. I mean, that's the very heart of the matter at hand anyway, is who you've chosen to be with or around. I'm not talking people, I'm talking about spiritually. So at this point in our lives, all of our lives, we know what's right and what's wrong. And when you're doing something that's wrong, you always know it. You might deny it, you might excuse it, you might push it under the rug or just not look at it, but you still know it's wrong. And you couldn't deny that. Just like when I was a child stealing candy from the drawer, I always knew that it was something that was bad, and it somehow made the candy taste better. So that's kind of how they get you, is they get you to do the bad things. They make you feel like it's okay and it's right when it really isn't. So that's where discernment comes in again. You have to be able to discern between the two. And even saying, well, I never read this book or that book, I never read the Bible, I never did this, I never did that. What's written on your heart? Plain and simple, there's no excuses here. None. You have to choose this day whom you shall serve. You're going to serve one or the other. That's basically your choice.
Absolutely. Fully agree with that. Fully agree with that, that's for sure. Wow. Okay. All right. Well, I'm thinking that we probably will call it a night for tonight, or a day for today. We're going to be back tomorrow, which is Sunday, with more from you, Caleb. So I'm not sure if there's anything you want to just end off with.
Well, just always remember that there's a way out. There's a healing. There's all kinds of things that God offers us. You just have to let him work in your life, in your heart. You can say no to him too. That's the beauty of free choice, free will. I would encourage you not to say no to him. He's more relentless than any enemy, and he'll chase you down. He'll just come to you anyway, because he loves you. That's the main thing, is he loves you. He does not want you to fall down. He doesn't want you to die. He doesn't want you to be left in the dust, like we're going to leave these evil creatures in the dust. Yes, there's a lot of questions around that. Why do they die and we don't? Why this, why that? Those, again, are questions for the ages. I do know that the Bible says we'll judge angels. I can't believe that it would be good angels that we're judging. I think it's going to be the bad ones. So there might be a way for them too. We don't know that. That's my personal opinion. It's definitely not something that I preach or teach. So I'm not a teacher nor a preacher. I am a warrior. I'm armed to the teeth. I'm ready to fight in a moment's notice if I have to. And I've been doing that for most of my life. But again, what you said, Chantel, is absolutely true. It's mostly about having faith. So it's about having that strong, firm core belief. And God doesn't ever dishonor that or walk away from it. In fact, he honors that more than anything else. You come to him with faith. I feel like I just barely scratched the surface again here with anything. There's just so much of it that it's almost astounding how much information there is still. And truth be told, it is actually really hard to come up with some of this explanation for you because it's really deep, most of it. And you just don't know what you don't know. And so how do you explain that? It's like trying to dissect a whale on the kitchen table in the house you live in. Most people can't put a whale in their house. So how do you go about that? What's the first step? You tell me. That's basically what you guys are asking me to do. Well, what's first? What part are we going to look at today? You know, I laugh and joke about it because I think it's kind of funny, but at the same time, I'll point another video out to you guys to watch. Look up Russian cat lady feeding her cats. That's kind of how I see the chat sometimes. You're all jumping for the same piece of meat at the same time. So if you see that video, you'll understand how I feel sometimes.
That's so funny. Yeah, it's called. It's a funny video. The Russian cat lady feeding her cats. Very funny.
That's what it's like coming to these shows. Anybody who's disclosing or talking about this knows exactly what I'm talking about. I'm sure some of you have too, trying to talk to your families, your friends. We're all on the crazy train together here, so just so you know that.
Yeah, we definitely are on this train together, and it's crazy, it's fun, it's happy, it's intense. It's sometimes you feel like you're on a knife's edge, but wow, it is. It's very, very. It's amazing times, and it's truly times that we can hang out together. And that's why I say this is really a time for us. And you know what I feel very led to be doing, especially this year, is to do, you know, some more of those gatherings, and I'll be doing them quite regularly, where we get together and just hang out and just chill and get to say hi to each other. I think that's so valuable. That beautiful human connection, love, right? Connection, that lovely feeling is what connects us together. Yeah.
We're all in this together, and we're only as strong as the weakest member. We're only as fast as the slowest member. And we try not to leave anybody behind if we can help it. So
yeah,
that's what I learned in my time in the service was teamwork is absolutely everything. So I kind of point that out so much. The wolf pack, that's what we are.
With your
to be alive at this time, to see these things happening around us, I couldn't have asked for anything better.
Exactly.
It's kind of fun to watch this happen. Sometimes it makes me sad that I was part of causing it to happen, because I was wholeheartedly into that darkness at one point. But there's always today, which is a brand new day. Each and every day is new. Has its own temptations and sins and everything else, but it also has its own mercy. If you just reach out and take it, it's really that simple.
Right. I agree. I love this. Lisa D. Caleb is the alpha wolf for sure. Shanti is the female alpha. We're all just wolves and wolverines or whatever it is. And it's so cool to have you guys here. And really, I enjoy these conversations and these gatherings with us. And Joanne, Deborah, and Jenny, thank you so much for supporting Caleb's show. Really, really appreciate you guys. And we'll let you know very soon again when we will be connecting as a live gathering. But tomorrow we will be back. So please be back with your questions again. I know there's a lot of questions that have flown past me. I mean, before I look again, it's zoomed right up. So please just be patient. I don't see everything all at the same time. And I think, yeah, maybe we'll do a Q&A tomorrow again. So I want to say, Caleb, are you good with that, doing a Q&A?
Sure.
Tomorrow?
I know
Okay,
that
well, then I think...
now that people are looking up the Russian cat lady feeding those cats. That's how it'll be. It's one of the first videos I've seen. So.
Okay, well then I think tomorrow night we will, or tomorrow morning for you guys, it's night for me. We will do a Q&A with Caleb, questions and answers. So bring your questions, and then I will put them forward. Just keep them in the chat. If you want to, in the meantime, you can email them to me, and I'm just going to give you my email address, chantalmeberg@gmail.com. Let me just put it in here. Because, as I said, I know that there were quite a few questions that we didn't get through tonight, but chantalmeberg@gmail.com. And Duke, I had to say, I saw your comment, which I had to have a chuckle at. You're not throwing your TV out because you get to see me on TV. I love that. Thank you. I'm a TV star. Yay. How funny is that? Okay, guys. Caleb, do you want to end off for us in prayer?
Sure. Heavenly Father, I thank you for a good sharing time. Thank you for fellowship. For me, this is about the only kind of church I need is this, just to be with the people and to portray who you are to them, and they can see you in me. And that's what sets me apart from anybody else that they know, is they know that I know you. I ask that you bless them with your presence, bless them with your peace and mercy, your generosity, your absolute kindness, and that crazy, reckless love that you show us. You go after the one, leave the 99. I just ask that you empower them, give them strength, and help them through this rest of today and the coming days as well, when they all get to see these things. It's not just going to be the few of us that get to see, it's going to be everybody at some point. So ask for protection. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Okay, guys and girls, we shall see you back tomorrow again. Have a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful day. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And look forward to catching up with you. And yeah, lots of interesting things ahead of us this year. God bless you all. And I wish you lots of health, wealth, and plenty of beautiful abundance of all the good things in life. Until then, bye-bye.